In the shadows of a world fractured by endless strife, where kingdoms crumble beneath the weight of their own ambitions, a prophecy stirs from the ashes of forgotten time. Long before the stars aligned to mark this fateful age, four riders emerged, embodiments of ancient powers that would bring ruin and despair. War, hunger, pestilence, and death. Their steeds thundered across the lands, leaving scars on the very soul of humanity. But amidst the chaos and despair, a secret lay hidden, an enigma whispered only in the oldest scrolls, concealed from mortal eyes. A fifth rider, cloaked in mystery and light, has awakened from a slumber spanning centuries. His purpose is unlike the others, not to destroy, but to redeem, to challenge the relentless tide of darkness, and to rewrite the fate of a world teetering on the brink of oblivion. This is the tale of those who wield the power of the apocalypse, and the one who dares to stand against it. A story of prophecy and peril, of ancient forces unleashed, and of a hope forged in the fires of the end. Welcome to the Four Horsemen, the beginning of the end. Chapter 1. The World on the Edge. The sun dipped low beyond the jagged horizon, bleeding its last golden light over a land suffocated by unrest and shadow. Cities that once rose like giants, proud and unyielding, now lay broken and abandoned. Cracked stones soaked with the blood of countless battles, their once vibrant streets choked with the silence of sorrow. The air hung heavy with acrid smoke and the faint, bitter scent of despair, carrying whispers of war that echoed in every desolate corner of the world. The earth itself seemed to tremble beneath the weight of fear and uncertainty, as if sensing the doom that crept closer with each passing moment. Across these scarred lands rode four figures, legends older than time itself, whose names were spoken in trembling voices and dreaded by all who still dared to hope. They were the harbingers of ruin, the embodiment of apocalypse, riding not for glory, but for the inevitable unraveling of existence. Their horses thundered across the barren plains, their shadows long and dark against the dying light. The first to appear was War, an imposing warrior clad in armor as red as fresh blood, jagged and fierce like the fires that rage through the heart of battle. His eyes burned with the fury of molten embers, scorching all who dared meet his gaze. His sword, forged in the infernos of ancient rage, cut through the air with a scream that echoed like thunder. With every swing, armies crumbled, cities fell, and the cries of millions filled the skies like a haunting symphony. War was the eternal flame that ignited the fires of destruction, relentless and insatiable in his thirst for conflict. Riding beside him was Hunger, gaunt and unyielding, his frame almost skeletal beneath tattered robes stained by famine's cruel hand. His eyes were hollow pits of endless longing, his skeletal hands clutching a pair of empty scales, forever tipping the balance between life and starvation. Wherever Hunger passed, fields once fertile turned to dust, rivers dried to cracked beds, and desperation spread like a silent, creeping plague. His presence withered crops and drained hope, a merciless shadow that left nothing but desolation in its wake. Behind Hunger came Pestilence, wrapped in rotting robes that seemed to shift and decay even as he moved. His face was hidden beneath a plague doctor's mask, its dark glass eyes reflecting the suffering he carried. From the depths of forgotten diseases and twisted, unnatural viruses, he summoned sickness with nothing more than a breath, a whisper, a touch. Towns fell silent beneath his shadow, as fever and pestilence consumed bodies one by one. No prayer could halt the relentless march of his invisible armies. None could escape the creeping death that followed in his wake. Last of all rode Death, silent and inevitable, draped in midnight black from head to toe. His horse was a towering beast, its hooves striking the ground without sound, as if gliding between the veil of life and the afterworld. Death's scythe, polished and gleaming under the fading light, was a cruel reminder that all living things must one day meet their end. Yet death was no tyrant nor cruel executioner. He was simply the final judge, impartial and merciless, the closing chapter written in every soul's story. Together, these four horsemen tore through the fragile fabric of a world already stretched thin and trembling on the brink. Their names were whispered in terror, their arrival a signal that the end had begun. Every village, city, and kingdom held its breath, waiting for the storm to consume all. But ancient prophecies spoke of more than these four. In the darkest corners, where even the four dared not tread, a fifth horseman stirred, a being cloaked not in destruction, but in light and mystery. Neither warlord nor bearer of doom, this rider carried a different purpose. From the depths of an ancient slumber, he awakened with a fragile thread in hand, a thread of hope so slender it could easily be broken, yet powerful enough to defy the very fate these foresought to impose. As the four horsemen unleashed devastation in waves of fire, famine, plague, and death, the world's fate balanced precariously between annihilation and redemption. Silent winds carried whispers of this hidden rider, a reckoning unlike any before, a promise that even in the darkest hour, the story might not end. The beginning of the end had come. Chapter 2. The Awakening of War. The land groaned beneath the weight of countless battles, each scar a testament to the relentless march of war. The earth itself seemed to weep under the constant barrage of clashing swords, broken shields, and the anguished cries of fallen warriors. In the twilight of a broken age, when hope was but a distant memory, the first horseman stirred from his ancient slumber, summoned by the ceaseless roar of conflict and the shattered dreams strewn across countless battlefields. His name was whispered among generals and soldiers alike. War, the eternal flame that fed on blood and fire, a force beyond mortal reckoning. He rode with a fury born of grudges older than kingdoms, his crimson armor gleaming with the light of 1,000 conflagrations. The metal plates seemed almost alive, flickering with the glow of burning cities and smoldering forests, a constant reminder of the destruction he wrought. Each swing of his sword carved devastation into the earth, igniting battles that spilled across continents like wildfire, unstoppable and all-consuming. His eyes, burning with fierce determination and ancient rage, saw not just the chaos he unleashed, but the fragile balance beneath his feet, the delicate line between survival and annihilation. From distant kingdoms to crumbling villages, the drums of war beat louder and louder, echoing across valleys and mountains, calling forth armies driven by fear, ambition, and a desperate hope for survival. Lords and mercenaries answered the summons, mustering legions of hardened soldiers and desperate peasants alike, their banners fluttering like storm clouds on the horizon. War's arrival was more than a force of destruction. It was a catalyst, a spark that ignited the fragile tinder of a world teetering on the brink of collapse. Yet, beneath the raging inferno of battle and the thunder of charging hooves, whispers began to spread. Tales of unexpected bravery amidst the carnage, of mercies granted in fleeting moments, of alliances forged not in the lust for power, but in the fire of necessity. Even as war unleashed his chaos, the human spirit fought fiercely to rise, refusing to be extinguished by the flames that sought to consume it. In the shadows of the battlefield, soldiers shielded the weak, healers tended the wounded, and those weary of endless strife dared to dream of peace. Far beyond the front lines, in the darkened corners of the world, the other horsemen stirred in their own shadowed realms. Hunger's hollow gaze turned toward fields barren and cracked, his presence withering crops and twisting the land into a wasteland of famine and despair. Pestilence prepared his shadowed mask, gathering unseen diseases and ancient plagues in his invisible grasp, ready to unleash sickness upon the living. And death waited patiently, the final arbiter of fate, his scythe poised to claim the souls left broken by war, famine, and disease. Yet the fifth horseman remained hidden, a silent sentinel watching the world's descent into madness. Cloaked in mystery and light, his awakening was yet to come, a beacon against the storm, a fragile hope to counter the gathering darkness. His purpose was unknown to those who lived beneath the shadow of apocalypse, but his coming would shift the balance between ruin and redemption. As war's fury tore across the land, as armies clashed and civilizations trembled, the stage was set for a reckoning that would shake the very foundations of existence. The beginning of the end was no longer a whispered rumor in frightened halls. It had become a thunderous roar that echoed across the shattered world, heralding a fate from which none could escape. Chapter 3. Hunger's Silent March. The once fertile fields that had fed generations now lay cracked and barren, scorched beneath a relentless sun that showed no mercy. Rivers that once roared with life-giving waters dwindled to faint, sorrowful whispers across desolate landscapes. The vibrant green of harvest had turned to ash and dust, leaving only the harsh, unyielding earth beneath an unforgiving sky. Villages that had once echoed with the laughter of children and the bustle of harvest now lay silent, their streets haunted by the hollow sounds of desperation and despair. This was the grim and merciless domain of hunger, the second horseman, silent, relentless, and utterly unforgiving. Hunger's figure was gaunt, almost skeletal, draped in tattered robes that fluttered like withered leaves caught in a cruel autumn breeze. His hollow eyes reflected a void deeper than the darkest abyss, a bottomless emptiness that seemed to consume all hope. In his hand, he carried a pair of scales, once a symbol of balance and justice, now twisted and forever tipped toward ruin and despair. Wherever hunger's shadow fell, famine followed like a creeping plague, stealing life grain by grain, breath by breath. The very air seemed heavier under his presence, weighed down by the invisible grip of starvation that tightened around every living being. In the dust-choked streets of forsaken towns, mothers bent over their children, whispering desperate prayers for rain that never came. The cries of starving infants were swallowed by the suffocating silence of empty bellies, while the elders gazed hopelessly at the barren fields that cracked open like ancient scars. Livestock wasted away, their ribs jutting beneath thinning hides, and the once bustling markets stood deserted, their stalls bare and lifeless. Hunger's march was a slow, cruel predator, gnawing at the fragile thread of survival. But hunger was more than just the absence of food. It was a gnawing void in the very soul of humanity. It twisted hearts and minds, turning brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor. Where trust once blossomed, suspicion took root like a thorny weed. Where love had flourished, desperation bred cruelty and betrayal. Communities fractured beneath starvation's siege, their social bonds fraying like tattered cloth caught in a violent storm. The fragile threads of civilization began to unravel, and the world grew darker under the weight of hunger's relentless advance. Yet, even in the face of such overwhelming despair, flickers of hope burned fiercely. Small acts of mercy emerged amidst the ruin. Farmers sharing the last handful of precious grain with strangers, weary travelers offering shelter beneath cracked and weathered roofs, villages coming together to pool their meager resources. These acts, though fragile and fleeting, were powerful defiance against the unyielding march of hunger. They spoke of the enduring resilience of the human spirit, a stubborn flame that refused to be snuffed out by the cold hand of starvation. Beyond the barren fields and broken homes, in the shadowed corners of the world, pestilence prepared his dark instruments. Wrapped in decay and disease, he wove his sinister tapestry of sickness, ready to strike where hunger had left bodies weakened and spirits broken. Death waited patiently, the inevitable final arbiter, poised to claim the souls harvested by his comrades' cruel work. Far beyond the horizon, war's burning fury still raged, fanning the flames of endless conflict that fed the cycle of destruction. As the four horsemen carved their path of devastation, the world trembled on the brink of collapse, teetering between ruin and oblivion. Yet beneath the chaos and ruin, a fifth presence stirred, silent, hidden, and mysterious. This rider bore not the mark of destruction, but carried a fragile promise of hope, a thread of light woven into the fabric of despair. His awakening was still to come, waiting for the moment to change the course of fate. The beginning of the end had arrived, and with it, a reckoning that would shake the very foundations of existence. Chapter 4. Pestilence's Veil of Shadows. A chilling silence had fallen over the towns and villages that once thrived in sunlight and laughter. Where children had played and markets had bustled, only an eerie stillness remained, broken only by the faintest cough or the distant groan of suffering. Pestilence, the third horseman, had come, and with him a veil of shadows that crept silently, unseen yet unstoppable. His form was draped in tattered, dark robes that seemed to absorb the light around him. Behind a plague doctor's mask, ancient and haunting, his eyes gleamed with a cold intelligence, the mind of a harbinger of disease that spared no soul. In his gloved hands, he carried vials of invisible poison, whispers of forgotten plagues from times long past. With each breath he exhaled, sickness spread like wildfire, invisible and insidious. Villages once vibrant with life became ghost towns overnight. Farmers who had survived the ravages of hunger now faced a new enemy within their own bodies. The sick were left abandoned, quarantined by fearful neighbors, or hidden away by those desperate to protect themselves. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and even the winds seemed to carry the mournful cries of the afflicted. Pestilence did not discriminate. King and peasant, soldier and child, none were spared his cruel touch. His arrival was a reminder that death need not come with swords or famine alone. Sometimes it crept silently through the veins of the living, unseen and unstoppable. Yet amid the rising tide of disease and despair, pockets of resistance began to form. Healers and scholars, armed with knowledge and determination, raced against time to find cures and comfort the afflicted. Secret gatherings exchanged remedies and prayers, kindling hope in the darkness. Still, the shadow of pestilence lengthened, threatening to engulf all in its suffocating grasp. Death's scythe gleamed ever nearer, poised to reap the harvest of souls weakened by disease and suffering. War's flames still roared in the distance, and hunger's relentless hunger gnawed at the edges of survival. And somewhere, hidden in the veiled corners of the world, the fifth horseman watched and waited. His purpose was shrouded in mystery, his power still dormant, but his time was drawing near. A silent force against the storm, a spark of light in the gathering darkness. The beginning of the end marched onward, each step a drumbeat echoing through the fractured world. Chapter 5. Death's Inevitable Embrace. In the dimming twilight of a world unraveled, where shadows stretched long over ruined cities and silent fields, there rode a figure no mortal dared meet without trembling, the fourth horseman, Death. Draped in robes as black as the void itself, his presence was a chilling stillness, the final note in a symphony of chaos and despair. Where he passed, life faltered and silence followed like a shroud. Death's scythe gleamed under the fading light, its blade forged in the cold fires of eternity. With every silent sweep, a soul was claimed, a story ended, a thread in the grand tapestry of existence severed. His eyes, unseen beneath his hood, were said to hold the cold certainty of fate itself, inevitable, impartial, and absolute. Unlike his companions, war, hunger, and pestilence, Death did not seek to destroy, but merely to fulfill the natural order. He was neither cruel nor vengeful, but a force that balanced the scales, a dark guardian of the final passage. His arrival signaled not just an end, but the promise of rest from suffering. As the world reeled beneath the weight of conflict, famine, and disease, Death moved silently among the living and the dying alike. Kingdoms fell into ruin, armies vanished beneath the earth, and entire villages faded into forgotten memories. The cries of the bereaved filled the air, mingling with the stillness that followed in death's wake. Yet within this inevitable embrace, the seeds of transformation were sown. Death was but one chapter in the story, a door to the unknown beyond the veil of mortal life. For every ending, there was the whisper of a beginning, and for every soul claimed, a destiny reborn. Far from the chaos, the fifth horseman stirred, a figure cloaked not in darkness, but in a light so faint it was nearly invisible. His purpose was unlike the others, not to end, but to redeem. His rise was the hope buried deep within the apocalypse, a spark of salvation waiting to ignite the final battle between despair and grace. The world stood poised on the knife's edge of oblivion. The four horsemen had unleashed their fury, but the story was far from over. The beginning of the end had become the dawn of a new reckoning. Chapter 6: The Hidden Rider Awakens. Beneath the storm of war's fire, hunger's desolation, pestilence's shadows, and death's cold embrace, the world trembled in chaos. Yet amidst the devastation, in the silent spaces between ruin and despair, a new presence began to stir. A presence unseen for centuries, cloaked in mystery and whispered in forgotten legends. The fifth horseman, the hidden rider, was awakening. Unlike his brethren, this rider bore no mark of destruction. His armor shimmered faintly, like a star veiled in mist, his eyes glowing with an ancient light that spoke of redemption rather than ruin. Where the others thrived on fear and despair, the hidden rider was a beacon, a fragile hope in a fractured world. Legends told of his arrival, spoken in hushed tones by seers and prophets across the ages. Some believed he was the harbinger of the final judgment. Others whispered he was a savior destined to turn the tide. But none truly understood his purpose or the power he wielded. As the horsemen rose, the winds shifted. The air grew thick with anticipation, charged with the electric pulse of something both terrifying and wondrous. His steed, a majestic creature cloaked in silver flame, galloped through the skies, leaving trails of light that shimmered against the darkened horizon. The world watched, uncertain and divided. Some saw the rider as a threat, a final instrument of doom. Others dared to hope, believing his arrival could herald a new dawn, a chance to reclaim what had been lost. The hidden rider moved through shattered lands and broken hearts, his presence a silent challenge to the devastation wrought by his four counterparts. With every step, he wove a tapestry of healing, of reconciliation, and of renewal, a fragile thread of light that dared to defy the darkness. Yet his awakening was only the beginning. Forces both mortal and divine stirred in response, drawn to the rider's power and purpose. Allies and enemies alike emerged from the shadows, ready to claim their place in the unfolding battle for the fate of the world. As the four horsemen rode on, relentless and unyielding, the fifth horseman stood poised to reshape the end. The beginning of the end was no longer a simple prophecy. It was a living, breathing reckoning. Chapter 7: War's Eternal Fury. The earth trembled beneath the thunderous gallop of war's mighty steed. His arrival was a tempest unleashed, a raging storm that swept across battlefields drenched in blood and fire. War, the first horseman, embodied the ceaseless fury of conflict, unrelenting, unyielding, and insatiable. Clad in crimson armor forged in the fires of countless battles, War's eyes burned with a savage light, reflecting the chaos he wrought wherever he rode. His sword, sharp as a lightning strike, cleaved through armor and bone alike, a symbol of destruction and unending strife. His war cries echoed through ravaged lands, a summons to carnage that no soul could resist. Cities crumbled under siege, their walls shattered by relentless assaults. Armies clashed in brutal combat, their cries of fury and pain mingling with the thunder of hooves. War's presence turned brother against brother, nation against nation, fueling hatred and division with every swing of his blade. But war was more than mere violence. He was a force that fed on the fears and ambitions of men, a shadow that grew longer as the world's wounds deepened. He twisted alliances, stoked betrayals, and shattered peace with ease. The flames of his fury consumed all who stood in his path, leaving only ashes and sorrow behind. Yet amid the carnage, the faintest glimmers of resistance flickered. Leaders of courage and conviction rallied their people, forging bonds to withstand the storm. Secret councils whispered of peace, of unity, even as the fires of war threatened to engulf them all. Beyond the battlefield, the other horsemen continued their grim work. Hunger gnawed at the edges of survival. Pestilence wove his dark veil of sickness, and death waited patiently to reap the fallen. And through it all, the hidden fifth rider moved unseen, gathering strength for the final reckoning. War's eternal fury was both a scourge and a warning, a reminder that even in the darkest hours, the will to fight, to endure, and a hope still burned bright within the hearts of humanity. The beginning of the end raged on, an unyielding storm that would reshape the fate of all. Chapter 8: The Gathering Shadows. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over a fractured world, the forces of darkness grew bolder. The four horsemen, war, hunger, pestilence, and death, had left scars upon the earth that bled into every corner of existence. Yet, beneath the veil of despair, unseen tendrils of power began to weave a web more intricate and perilous than ever before. The land itself seemed to mourn, its forests whispering secrets in the cold wind, its mountains trembling with silent dread. Villages huddled behind weakened walls, their inhabitants clutching worn talismans and desperate prayers, hoping to stave off the approaching storm. Fear hung thick in the air, thick enough to choke the breath from the lungs of the bravest souls. In the shadows, ancient powers stirred. Forgotten deities long banished from memory awoke from their slumber, drawn by the chaos that rippled across the world. Their voices, barely more than whispers, carried promises of power, vengeance, or salvation, temptations that lured desperate hearts into shadowed paths. Amidst this gathering tempest, the hidden rider, the fifth horseman, moved quietly through the broken lands. His presence was a flicker of light in a darkened world, a fragile beacon that wove hope through despair. With each step, he sought allies among the scattered remnants of humanity, warriors worn by battle, healers burdened by loss, and visionaries who dreamed of a future beyond ruin. But the path was treacherous. Shadows stretched long and deep, concealing enemies who thrived on chaos and suffering. Dark cults worshipped the four horsemen, summoning malevolent forces to hasten the apocalypse. Betrayals lurked in every corner, and the fragile threads of trust were tested to their breaking points. The fifth rider's mission was clear, yet daunting: to unite the fractured and forgotten, to kindle the embers of resistance, and to stand as the final bulwark against the coming darkness. His awakening was a spark in the gathering night, a promise that even in the deepest shadows, light could still endure. As the world teetered on the edge of oblivion, the storm's eye approached, the moment when fate would be decided, when the beginning of the end would reveal its true face. Chapter 9: The Fractured Alliances. The world was a shattered mosaic of fear and desperation, its pieces scattered across battle-scarred lands and broken cities. Amidst the ruins, the remnants of humanity clung to fragile hopes and even more fragile alliances. The four horsemen, war, hunger, pestilence, and death, had sown discord so deep that trust was a precious and rare commodity. Yet, from the fractured alliances arose the faintest glimmers of resistance, fragile as a new dawn breaking through storm clouds. Leaders once divided by suspicion and ambition now found themselves bound by necessity. The whispered council of warlords and survivors met in shadowed chambers, their voices low but determined. Old grievances were set aside, replaced by a shared understanding. Survival demanded unity, even if it meant forging alliances with former enemies. But trust was a double-edged sword. Every handshake was weighed against suspicion, every promise measured against the harsh realities of betrayal. In these fragile bonds lurked the ever-present threat of treachery, for desperation bred cunning as much as courage. Among those who sought unity was the hidden rider, the fifth horseman, whose presence was both a symbol and catalyst of hope. He moved silently among the factions, weaving threads of alliance through whispered words and quiet deeds. His light cut through the darkness, inspiring warriors, healers, and scholars alike to join a cause greater than their own survival. Yet the task was monumental. The horsemen's shadows still loomed large, and the forces that served them thrived in chaos. Cults devoted to pestilence brewed poisons in secret. Warlords fueled by war's fury plotted endless campaigns. Famine-stricken tribes grew restless under hunger's crushing weight, and death's silence haunted every corner. Amidst this turmoil, the Fifth Rider's mission took shape: to transform fractured alliances into an unbreakable front, to bind the scattered pieces of a dying world into a force capable of confronting the apocalypse. Each new ally was a spark, each act of unity a step toward redemption. The world stood at a precipice, balanced between ruin and salvation. The beginning of the end was no longer a whispered prophecy. It was an unfolding reality, shaped by every choice, every alliance, and every spark of defiance against the darkness. Chapter 10: Hunger's Relentless Grip. Across the lands ravaged by war and disease, another scourge gnawed relentlessly at the bones of humanity: hunger, the second horseman. His presence was an unyielding famine, a brutal force that tore through fields and granaries, leaving nothing but dust and despair in its wake. Where once crops flourished and markets thrived, now only empty silence remained, broken by the desperate cries of the starving. Hunger wore no armor of steel or fire, but his influence was no less terrifying. He was the gnawing emptiness that hollowed bellies and weakened limbs, the shadow that crept into homes and hearts alike. His steed was gaunt, a skeletal beast with eyes burning like embers, a grim reminder of the slow death he delivered with every passing day. Villages fell silent as mothers wept for their children, and elders whispered prayers to gods that seemed deaf to their suffering. The soil cracked beneath the sun's cruel gaze, refusing to yield life to the hands that once tilled it. Trade routes collapsed under the weight of scarcity, and distrust festered among desperate communities. Yet even in this desolation, resilience stirred. Some banded together, pooling what little they had to survive another day. Secret gardens bloomed in hidden corners, tended by those who refused to surrender to the famine. Tales of miraculous harvests and forbidden remedies spread like wildfire, a testament to the stubborn will to live. The fifth horseman moved through these lands, his light piercing the darkness. He carried hope to the hungry, offering more than mere survival, a promise that even the most barren soil could bloom again. His presence inspired acts of generosity and courage, small flames of resistance against the vast hunger consuming the world. But hunger's grip tightened, relentless and merciless, testing the limits of human endurance and compassion. As bellies growled and bodies weakened, the battle was not only for survival, but for the very soul of humanity. The beginning of the end pressed onward, a relentless tide threatening to sweep away all that remained. Yet within the storm, the fifth horseman's light flickered still, a beacon amid the famine's shadow, a promise that even in the darkest hunger, hope could endure. Chapter 11: Pestilence's Dark Veil. The air grew thick and heavy, carrying whispers of a shadow spreading unseen but deadly. The creeping plague that heralded the third horseman, pestilence. Unlike the open fury of war or the visible desolation of hunger, pestilence moved in silence, a creeping, insidious force that seeped into the bones of the world. His arrival was marked not by thunderous hooves, but by the silent fall of sickness, the invisible threads of decay that wove their way through cities and countrysides alike. Pestilence rode a steed cloaked in pallid mist, its breath a cold fog that chilled the marrow. His eyes were pools of endless darkness, reflecting the suffering he sowed with every step. The plague he commanded was ancient, a cruel legacy passed down through centuries, a force beyond mortal cure or control. Villages that once bustled with life fell eerily silent as disease swept through their streets. Mothers hid their children, while the sick were left to the mercy of fate and despair. Temples overflowed with prayers, yet answers were scarce. The touch of pestilence was death's whisper before the final blow. Yet pestilence was not merely destruction. In his wake, he forced humanity to confront its fragility and interdependence. The sick and the healthy, the powerful and the weak, all found themselves bound by a shared vulnerability. He was a grim reminder that even the mightiest could fall, that no fortress could keep out the unseen enemy. Amidst this relentless suffering, the fifth horseman moved with purpose. His presence was a balm against the scourge, a light in the darkest nights of illness and despair. He sought to mend what pestilence broke, to heal fractured communities and rekindle hope where death's shadow loomed largest. The battle was not simply against the disease, but against the fear and hopelessness it bred. The fifth rider's mission grew ever more urgent, to rally the fractured and the weary, to inspire courage in the face of invisible death, and to remind the world that even amidst the darkest plague, the spark of life could not be extinguished. The beginning of the end pressed onward, but with every shadow pestilence cast, the fifth horseman's light shone brighter, an unyielding defiance in the face of oblivion. Chapter 12. Death's Inevitable Embrace. The final horseman moved with a silence more profound than the stillness of the deepest night. Death, the last and most dreaded of the four. His approach was felt not through sound, but through the sudden, chilling absence of life. Where his shadow fell, hearts ceased to beat, breaths grew shallow, and the world grew cold. Death's steed was a massive black beast, hooves silent as they touched the earth, cloaked in an aura of endless twilight. His armor, forged from the void itself, bore ancient runes that pulsed with a cold, otherworldly light, a testament to his dominion beyond mortal realms. Death's eyes were twin abysses, dark, fathomless, reflecting the countless souls he had claimed throughout the endless march of time. He carried no weapon, for his very presence was a blade sharper than any sword, a final touch that could still the fire of life in an instant. His breath was the last whisper, the quiet farewell that none could evade. Across the ravaged lands, the weight of death's coming settled like a shroud. Families clung together, their hands trembling in silent prayer, knowing that no bargain or plea could halt his relentless march. In every village, every city, in the hearts of kings and peasants alike, the fear was unanimous. Death was the great equalizer, impartial and inevitable. No fortress could withstand him. No healer could defy his will. His domain stretched beyond battlefields, reaching into homes, fields, and forgotten corners where life stubbornly clung to existence. Yet death was not merely an end, but a necessary passage, a gatekeeper to what lay beyond. In his wake, he left space for renewal, for the cycles of life to continue. He was the ultimate truth, the final judge whose shadow spared no one, but who ensured that all were granted their due. His presence reminded the living that mortality was the only constant, and from this inevitability sprang the fragile beauty of life itself. Amidst this unyielding truth, the hidden fifth horseman moved with purpose. His light was a subtle defiance against death's finality, a radiant thread woven through the dark fabric of fate. Where death closed doors, the fifth rider sought to open them, offering redemption to the lost, challenging the final decree, and weaving fragile threads of hope and salvation from the fraying tapestry of existence. Their paths intertwined in a cosmic dance between endings and beginnings. The world held its breath, caught between despair and hope, as the four horsemen rode with relentless purpose, casting shadows long and cold across the land. Yet through the darkness, the fifth horseman's light flickered, a fragile, unwavering beacon, signaling that even death's inevitable embrace could not extinguish the enduring spark of salvation. The beginning of the end pressed onward, a symphony of despair and hope entwined, where every moment held the power to reshape the fate of all living things. Chapter 13. The Hidden Rider's Call. Amidst the shadows cast by the relentless four, a presence unseen yet profoundly felt began to stir. The fifth horseman, long hidden from mortal eyes and whispered legend, emerged from the depths of forgotten realms with a purpose unlike any other. Where the others brought destruction, despair, and finality, he carried a light, a beacon of hope that shimmered through the encroaching darkness. His arrival was subtle yet undeniable, felt as a shift in the very fabric of the world. In the broken lands where war, hunger, pestilence, and death reigned supreme, whispers of salvation began to ripple through the despair. The hidden rider's steed was unlike the others, radiant and strong, its hooves striking the earth with a pulse of renewed life. His armor gleamed with ancient symbols of redemption, and his eyes shone with unwavering resolve. As he traveled, the fifth horseman sought out the fractured remnants of humanity, those broken by suffering but unbroken in spirit. He moved silently through ruined villages, battlefields strewn with the fallen, and famine-ravaged fields, carrying a promise that stirred hearts hardened by despair. His voice, when heard, was like a soothing wind cutting through the harshest storm, a call to unity, courage, and hope. The hidden rider understood that the battle ahead was not merely against the tangible horrors unleashed by his brethren, but against the despair that threatened to consume every soul. He spoke of a dawn beyond the darkness, a world reborn from ashes and tears. His message spread slowly but surely, kindling a fragile flame in the hearts of warriors, healers, and common folk alike. Yet his path was perilous. The forces aligned with the four horsemen sought to snuff out his light, fearing the hope he represented. Cults devoted to pestilence brewed poisons to silence him. Warlords consumed by war's fury sent assassins to hunt him. Hunger's desolate tribes sought to starve his followers into submission, and death's shadow loomed, waiting to claim him. But the fifth horseman's resolve was unyielding. He knew that the true battle was a war for the soul of humanity, a struggle not just to survive, but to rise, to heal, and to reclaim a future once thought lost. Each step he took was a testament to defiance against oblivion, a pledge that even in the darkest hour, hope could ignite a revolution. The beginning of the end was no longer a harbinger of despair alone. With the fifth horseman's call, it became a beacon of redemption, an invitation to fight not just for life, but for the promise of a new dawn. Chapter 14. The Gathering Storm. The world trembled beneath the weight of approaching destiny. As the hidden rider's light grew brighter, the forces of the four horsemen converged like a storm unleashed. War's battalions clashed with desperate fury. Hunger's famished crowds surged like tides of anguish. Pestilence's plague spread in unseen waves, and death's shadow loomed over all like a suffocating veil. Yet, amid this chaos, a new force gathered, one born from hope, unity, and the fierce will to survive. From scattered remnants of shattered kingdoms, from broken villages and forgotten hamlets, survivors heeded the fifth horseman's call. Warriors weary of endless bloodshed lowered their weapons. Healers braved disease-ridden lands, and starving souls shared the last of their meager provisions. Together, they formed a fragile alliance, one bound not by conquest, but by the promise of salvation. The fifth horseman rode at their forefront, his presence a rallying beacon amid the gathering storm. His radiant steed thundered through valleys and across barren plains, carrying the hope of renewal. His voice, calm yet resolute, wove through the ranks like a melody, inspiring courage where fear once reigned. Yet the storm's fury was far from spent. The four horsemen, sensing the shift, unleashed their full might in a desperate bid to snuff out the flickering light of hope. Battles erupted across the scarred earth, each more brutal than the last. War's legions, fueled by rage and bloodlust, tore through the fragile defenses. Hunger's desperate hordes struck with wild, ravenous force. Pestilence's sickness sickened even the strongest, and death's cold hand reached to claim the fallen. But the fifth horseman's followers fought not merely for survival. They fought for a future. Every clash, every sacrifice wove a tapestry of resistance, a testament to humanity's unyielding spirit. The fifth rider moved among them, a guardian and guide, his light shielding the weary and igniting fierce determination in the hearts of the hopeless. As the storm gathered, so too did the understanding that this was more than an end. It was a reckoning, a chance to redefine destiny. The beginning of the end was now a crucible, where darkness and light would collide in a final, epic battle for the soul of the world. The fate of all hung in the balance, and the hidden rider's light burned brighter than ever, defiant against the gathering storm. Chapter 15. The Last Reckoning. The world stood on the edge of oblivion, a battlefield stretched beyond horizon and time. The four horsemen had unleashed their full fury, and the land was scarred by endless war, famine, pestilence, and death. Yet amidst the ruin, the fifth horseman rode, undaunted, a blazing light against the crushing darkness. This final chapter was not only an ending, but the moment where fate itself would be rewritten. Armies clashed beneath skies blackened with smoke and ash. War's crimson fury met the unyielding will of the united survivors. Hunger's ravenous hordes clashed with those who dared to share their scant provisions. Pestilence's invisible terror faced the brave healers and protectors who defied despair. Death's cold grasp reached out for every soul, but the hidden rider moved between life and death, guarding those who refused to surrender. The fifth horseman's presence was a beacon of hope in the maelstrom. His armor glowed with the light of ancient promises, his voice a clarion call echoing through shattered valleys. He reminded the broken world of the power of redemption, the strength found in courage and unity. With every word, every act, he wove a new destiny, a future born not of destruction, but of renewal. The horsemen's shadows lengthened, yet the hidden rider's light grew, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The final battle was fierce and unforgiving, a tempest where despair and hope collided. Time itself seemed to hold its breath as the fate of all creation teetered on the brink. In the end, it was not strength alone that would decide the outcome, but the indomitable will to believe, belief in a dawn beyond darkness, in life beyond death, and in a future shaped by those who dared to hope. As the dust settled and silence fell, the hidden rider stood triumphant, not as a conqueror, but as a guardian of the new dawn. The beginning of the end had passed, and from the ashes rose a world reborn, a testament to the enduring power of hope against the shadows.